No one saw the nights I sat alone in an empty factory, back against the wall, my mind spinning with one single question: did I just destroy everything? No headlines covered the moments I had to borrow money from friends to pay rent, even after selling PayPal for what most people assumed would be enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. But I poured every cent into Tesla, into SpaceX, into something no one else believed was possible at the time. If you're failing, if you're exhausted, if everything you build keeps falling apart, then I need you to understand this: you're not done. You're just getting started. No one who ever succeeded got there without facing a moment where they wanted to disappear. The issue isn't how many times you fail. The real question is, what will you do with failure number 1001? People think Tesla is the result of genius. Wrong. It's the product of panic attacks, running out of money, employees quitting, investors laughing in my face, and countless sleepless nights wondering if the company would survive the week. One day I realized, as long as I'm still breathing, the company still has a chance, and the same is true for you. Where are you right now in your journey? Maybe you just got rejected for a job. Maybe the project you poured your heart into just collapsed. Maybe someone you trusted walked away. None of that defines you. How you respond is what shapes the person you're becoming. I failed before we had a product, before Tesla had even a single dollar in the bank, before a single customer agreed to buy anything. No one taught me how to get back up before all three of our first rocket launches exploded. I only learned by refusing to leave the fight. Success isn't a reward for the most talented. It's the punishment given to the most relentless. It arrives late, it arrives hard, and it always demands more than you thought you could pay. But the longer you endure, the more it starts to lean in your favor. If you're listening to me and thinking, I don't know if I'm strong enough, then here's what I'll say to you. I wasn't sure either. No one ever is, but we choose not to quit. And that's what makes the difference. You don't need the world to believe in you. You just need to keep moving forward. Don't wait for someone's approval before you act. Don't wait for the perfect time to begin. I've never seen anyone succeed because they waited for the right moment. Every one of them started while full of doubt, underprepared, and without enough resources. They started in the middle of chaos. And if that's where you are right now, congratulations. You're standing in the perfect spot to begin again. The question isn't how many times have you failed? The question is, do you still want to try one more time? Because if the answer is yes, then let me tell you, this could be the turning point. Not because it's going to be easier this time, but because you didn't quit after all the times that felt like the end. This world doesn't reward the smartest person in the room. It pays the one who's still standing when everyone else has left. Look back at every time you've fallen. You're still here, still reading, still thinking, still holding on to a flicker of fire that hasn't gone out. That's more than enough to begin again. You don't need certainty. You just need to choose not to retreat. And if someone were to ask me, Elon, how did you survive 1,000 failures? I wouldn't talk about strategy or talent. I'd say this: I didn't leave. And if you don't leave, if you stay one more day, one more week, one more attempt, then I'll tell you this: you're not finished. You're only just beginning. I'm not a genius. If you're picturing success as something that comes from extraordinary intelligence, prestigious degrees, or a superior brain, raise that idea now. The people who've worked with me know this well. I ask questions to the point of annoyance. I'm not afraid to admit I understand something, and most of the time I learn by failing. No one needs you to be the smartest person in the room. They need you to be the last one standing when all the smarter ones have already given up. Someone once told me straight to my face, you don't understand enough physics to run a rocket company. And they weren't entirely wrong. I'm not an aerospace expert. But I didn't walk away. I sat there, read thousands of pages of technical documents. I asked every engineer, every scientist, every mechanic on the factory floor. I learned by dissecting every detail, every failure, every deviation. I wasn't better than them. I just stayed longer than they did. Don't think you need to be special to do something extraordinary. The extraordinary comes from relentless action, not from the label of genius. I know plenty of people who are smarter than me, but they gave up when things got too hard. They wanted the fast, clean, painless path. I didn't. I was willing to sit in the chaos, work through every small issue, every tangled knot until it began to take shape. It's persistence, not brilliance, that built real results. I invested everything I had into keeping 3 companies alive, Tesla, SpaceX, and Solar City. I didn't keep a single dollar for myself. I had to borrow money to live. I'm not telling you this to prove I'm brave. I just want you to see, if you truly believe in something, then risk no longer feels like a threat. It becomes a necessary part of the journey. No one told me it would be okay. No one guaranteed Tesla would survive. No one promised the rockets would fly. But I kept going. And when you keep going, in spite of fear, in spite of loneliness, in spite of doubt, that's what sets you apart. You don't need to be the one with all the answers. You just need to be the one who keeps asking the questions. Curiosity, not genius, is what moves me forward. Every time a product failed, I didn't blame anyone. I asked why, then why again, until I reached the root. From there, solutions emerged. Thinking isn't a treasure you're born with. It's a skill you build through repetition and a refusal to stop. I used to sleep on the factory floor, not because I was poor, but because I needed my team to know I wouldn't ask them to do anything I wasn't willing to do myself. I was them. I stayed with them. I stood beside them during the hardest, worst, longest hours. And you can do the same with any team you're leading, whether it's a company, a family, or just yourself. Your consistent presence creates stability for the whole system. No complex theory, no grand speeches, just you refusing to leave when everything starts to fall apart. There's a simple paradox. People only believe in you after you no longer need them to. When Tesla was struggling, no one wanted to be involved. But when the Model S started making noise, they all came back. Don't build your confidence on someone else's recognition. Build it on every step you take alone. That's how you forge the kind of strength no one can take away. I'm telling you this not to pressure you, but to free you. You don't need to be the best. You don't need to be the one everyone expects the most from. You just need to be the one who doesn't disappear when the storm hits. And if you're still here today, if you're still listening, then you're far stronger than you think, because most of the world checked out long ago. You don't need to be great to start, but you have to start if you want to become great, and you have to keep going if you want to finish the race. No genius required, just don't stop. For a long time, I believed that if I worked hard enough, performed well enough, and gave enough of myself, people would trust me. I thought that if I worked more, slept less, and sweat harder, the team would follow me to the end. But then came a breaking point, when everything started to crack, and I realized something painful. You can't lead with perfection, you have to lead with belief. I used to try to shoulder everything myself. I thought if I could endure more, if I kept fixing the system, everything would be fine. But the system doesn't need a fixer, it needs someone who can make people believe that continuing is still worth it, not because things are going smoothly, but because there's a greater reason not to give up. There were times when I had no answers. I couldn't guarantee we'd have funding tomorrow. I couldn't promise the product would launch on time. I couldn't be sure the team would get paid, but I still had to stand in front of the entire company and say, we will find a way. Not because I knew for certain, but because if I didn't believe, no one else would have the strength to believe either. And sometimes all it takes is one person who still believes to pull the whole team back from the edge. You know, you might be the most talented person in the room, but if you can't get others to believe in the path you're taking, yeah, that talent won't take you far. The people following you, you don't need you to know everything. They need you not to break. They need you to be steady enough for them to lean on, even for just a second. They don't need a perfect leader. They need someone who truly believes in what they're doing. I used to think that motivation came from logic, but it doesn't. It comes from emotion. People act not because they've been convinced by sharp reasoning. They act because they've been inspired. And that inspiration only comes from people who dare to live truthfully, to believe deeply, and to pay the price honestly. There were days I said nothing. I just showed up. I sat in the workshop, surrounded by machines, oil, smoke, and exhaustion. My team saw me there, and that was enough. No commands, no speeches, your presence. When everything is chaos, is the clearest signal that we haven't given up yet. If you're leading anything, a company, a small group, or even your own healing journey, you need to ask yourself, do the people around you truly believe in what you're doing, or are they just going through the motions? And if they don't believe, look inward. Not to blame yourself, but to ask, what am I leading with? A title, authority, or belief? I didn't understand at first why, even after doing my absolute best, the team kept falling apart. Later, I realized it was because they couldn't see that I believed in them. I was trying to control instead of leading. I was trying to fix instead of inspiring. And so I changed. I started sharing my real fears. I talked about the struggle as part of the mission. I didn't promise victory. I promised I wouldn't walk away. From that moment on, I stopped trying to be invincible. I chose to be the first to stand up when belief started to falter. And when I changed how I thought, the team changed too. They didn't need a perfect Elon Musk. They needed someone who was willing to walk with them, even in the dark. If you're in a moment where everything feels chaotic, stop and look around. People don't need you to solve every problem. They just need you to stay steady, to be present, and not to give up. When you lead with belief, you create a field of energy stronger than any spreadsheet, plan, or KPI. Because belief, once lit, can illuminate an entire room gone dark. And if you ask me what the most important leadership skill is, I wouldn't say strategy, management, or decision-making. I'd say belief. Belief in what you're doing, belief in the people beside you, and belief that even when nothing is certain, you're still a reason to keep going, not because you're perfect, but because you dare to believe, and because of that, others dare to follow. Every week Tesla stayed alive in the early days, we considered it a miracle. That's not an exaggeration. We didn't have enough money to pay salaries on time, not enough parts to finish a car, not enough trust from investors, and not enough time to make another mistake. But even in those breathless moments, I forced myself to do one thing. Choose what was right, not what was easy. You'll always face two paths. One is quick, comfortable, with little resistance and little risk. The other is filled with thorns, met with doubt, demands sacrifice, and offers no guarantees. Most people take the first path because it feels safe and stable. But that feeling, if you cling to it too long, will kill everything you once dreamed of building. I've turned down many attractive investment deals simply because they would have steered Tesla away from its mission. I've cut countless flashy features because they didn't truly solve core problems. I once sat all night with engineers just to decide whether to keep a small design detail in the car's interior, because even though it looked beautiful, it increased production costs and did nothing to enhance user experience. You think that's trivial? This is the essence of every hard choice. When you say no to what's easy, you're choosing to stay honest. A company can survive through caution, but only those that pursue what's right can change the world. And if you're building anything, a business, a career, or a new version of yourself, you'll constantly have to choose to chase short-term approval or to hold on to long-term values. And the truth is, doing the right thing is almost never easy. It will cost you sleep, it will cost you people, it will cost you being misunderstood, but it's also the reason you'll be remembered. I remember vividly a night in Fremont, standing alone on the empty factory floor, staring into the cold darkness, asking myself, if Tesla dies tomorrow, would anyone truly care? The answer sobered me. I realized that if we were just building another electric car company, no one would. But if we were doing something that mattered, something right, then even failure would still mean something. From that day on, I stopped thinking about how to make Tesla survive. I started thinking about how to make Tesla valuable. Every decision no longer revolved around staying safe, but around one question: does this push the world forward? If not, scrap it. If yes, pursue it to the end, even if it burns 5 more years of my life. And that changed everything. You'll be tempted by shortcuts. They'll tell you to do something just to hold your position, to compromise a little, to wait for a better time. Don't listen. Every better time is something you create when you refuse to step off the right path. Consistency might isolate you, but it's also the only thing that keeps you intact when everyone else around you begins to break. I'm not writing a formula for success. I'm showing you the essence of choice. Every day, you'll be invited to take the easy route, and every day you'll have to choose the opposite. Not because it's appealing, but because it's right. Because it makes you into the person you want to become. You're standing at a crossroads wondering whether to change your course, to ease the pressure, to avoid pain, to protect your image. I urge you to stop for a second and ask, does this choice serve what I truly believe in? If the answer is no, then no matter how easy it looks, don't take it. The world doesn't lack people who choose easy, but the world is changed by those who choose right. And sometimes just one person committed to what's right is enough to spark a wave no one can stop. Be that person. Not because you're sure you'll win, but because you're sure what you're doing is worth fighting for. There's a moment I'll never forget. At the end of 2008, Tesla was nearly out of cash. SpaceX had just failed 3 consecutive rocket launches. The media was critical. Investors walked away. Employees were anxious. I sat alone in my office, staring at the financial spreadsheet, and understood one thing. Either I make a decision right now, or everything collapses. But the problem wasn't what to choose. The problem was that any choice could destroy half the hope I had poured my entire life into. I had exactly $40 million left, just enough to save one. Tesla or SpaceX. If I picked one, the other would die. And if I split the money evenly, there was a high chance both would die together. There was no safe choice, no perfect answer, no advice that could help. Only one thing remained. I had to decide for myself. And I chose to do the craziest thing. I split the last of the money, bet everything on both, and prayed. No one understood that decision. Not even I was sure I was being rational. But I knew this. If I didn't dare to choose, it would be the hesitation itself that killed everything. You will never win if you keep waiting for the perfect decision. In reality, it doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is the courage to choose, even when you know the price might be high. Leaders aren't born from easy situations. They're forged in moments where every path leads to loss, and they still have to step forward and take responsibility. Many people think being a founder means making wise decisions. In fact, it means being the first to choose between 2 bad options, and no one is coming to help. You have to choose between firing someone you care about or keeping them and risking the whole company. You have to choose between keeping promises to customers or ensuring the survival of your product. You have to choose between the safe route and the right one, even if it's full of danger. And you have to do it again and again, day after. I've had to make decisions to manufacture cars with missing parts, lacking manpower, and dwindling belief. Employees quit when the product wasn't finished. Meetings were interrupted by investors getting up and walking out. And you know what? All that is normal. There is no smooth stage when building something great. There is only a relentless chain of hard decisions, one after another, without pause. If you're building something and thinking, why do all the choices hurt? Then I'm telling you, you're exactly where you need to be. That very sense of uncertainty, that fear of making the wrong move, that pressure like your back is against the wall, that's what shapes you into someone brave enough to lead. Don't wait for comfort to return. It won't, and it shouldn't. You want to be the one who wins, then you have to be willing to make the decisions no one else dares to make. You have to choose in the fog. You have to choose in isolation. You have to choose and live with the consequences, and then choose again every time things begin to fall apart. The victory doesn't go to the one who always chooses right. It goes to the one who dares to choose when no one else will. People won't remember you for making perfect decisions. They'll remember you because you were the one person who didn't run when it all came crashing down. And you'll remember yourself, not in the moment of glory, but in the moment you didn't back away. I split the last 40 million because I couldn't accept abandoning either mission. I couldn't stand in front of the Tesla or SpaceX team and say, I chose to save the other side. I'm sorry. No, I chose to believe. I chose to risk. I chose to take responsibility. And that single hardest decision, that's what kept both companies alive to this day. And if you're standing in front of a decision you're afraid you're not strong enough to make, let me say this. Don't wait until you feel ready. Choose, and then make that choice the right one. I used to think pressure was just a phase, that if I worked well enough, solved enough problems, and pushed the company through enough near-death moments, then one day everything would be calm. But then I realized pressure doesn't disappear, it just changes form. At first, it was the fear of not having enough money to pay salaries, then the fear that the product launch would fail, then the fear of the media twisting the story. Then came the expectations of shareholders, the public, the entire world. The further you go, the pressure doesn't decrease, it only increases. And if you don't learn how to manage it, you'll break in the middle of your own glory. You'll be tested not when you're at your weakest, but when you're at your strongest. When the world sees you as the symbol of success, that's when even the smallest mistake can become a global scandal. I've taken dozens of calls in the middle of the night, been flooded by waves of criticism in the press, and forced to respond to things I hadn't even fully understood. And I'll tell you the truth, no armor is thick enough to block all those arrows. You only have one option: manage the pressure or be crushed by it. I started practicing something I used to think was pointless, creating a moment of stillness every day. Just 10 minutes, turn off the noise, no phones, no emails, no strategy, just sit in silence to do one thing: check whether my mind was still intact. You think that's simple, it's not. When you're being chased by life or meth problems, stopping is the last thing you want to do, but that stillness, that's what saved me. Not because it solved anything, but because it kept me from falling into a panic spiral. I also learned how to say no. No to unnecessary meetings, no to attractive offers unrelated to the mission, no to trying to control everything at once. I started narrowing my focus, cutting the clutter, and pouring my energy into just 1-2 critical things each day. When you push yourself to handle 10 things at once, you're not being strong, you're burning yourself out. The person who can sort pressure, prioritize, and say no is the one with the stamina to go the distance. I remember the period of Model 3's production hell. We were trying to scale from a few thousand cars a year to hundreds of thousands. Everything kept breaking. Robots malfunctioned, supply chains jammed, engineers were exhausted. I slept on the factory floor because I didn't have time to go home. In that state, it didn't take a major mistake. Just a small glitch could collapse the entire system. I had to stay calm while others lost direction. I had to make the team believe there was still a way out, even when I couldn't yet see it myself. Staying calm doesn't mean being emotionless. It's intentional. It's choosing to keep a clear head so others can lean on you. I learned how to break problems down, not fix the entire production line, but fix that one robot first. When things are too big, too vague, you go numb. But when you break it down and tackle each piece step by step, you create something vital: momentum. Momentum is what carries you forward when nothing else can. Pressure doesn't just come from work, it comes from within, from the need to be perfect, from the expectation to win, from the fear that if you don't hold it all together, everything will collapse. But let me tell you this, you don't have to hold everything. You just need to know what's worth carrying and what needs to be let go. I once tried to carry it all, and it nearly destroyed me. Then I learned to delegate, to trust others, to teach them, then take a step back. And when I did, I discovered something I thought didn't exist: relief. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if everything is closing in on you at once, I want you to remember, you don't need to handle it all. You need to handle the right things. And you don't have to be hard all the time. You just need to be soft enough not to shatter, and clear enough not to be swept away. Don't run from pressure. Turn around and face it. Then break it down, sort it, simplify it. Bit by bit, you can't change pressure, but you can change how you walk through it. And sometimes that alone determines how far you'll actually go. I used to believe that in order to ensure everything ran smoothly, I had to control every step, every detail, every decision, every bolt, every design, every line of code. I wanted to know it all because I was afraid. I was afraid that if I didn't check, something would go wrong, afraid that if I didn't do it myself, things would go off track. But then I realized control is not strength. Control is a reaction to the fear of loss. And when you act from fear, you can't lead anyone, not even yourself. When we fell into the production hell of the Model 3, I worked over 120 hours a week, slept under my desk, ate cold meals to the soundtrack of nonstop machinery. But I realized there was a bigger problem than any technical glitch. People were waiting for me to do their job for them. They didn't dare to decide, didn't dare to make mistakes, didn't dare to take responsibility. And that wasn't their fault. It started with me. When you hold all the power in your hands, you unknowingly create a system of dependency. When you always step in to save the day, you're actually killing the team's autonomy. I started to change, not by letting go of everything, but by learning to tell the difference between what needs me and what needs someone else. I stopped asking, can I do this? And started asking, who is the best person to do this without me? That small question opened a new world. I discovered engineers with better ideas than mine. I watched young team members solve problems I hadn't even noticed yet. I saw clearly when you empower the right way, you don't get weaker, you become exponentially stronger. One engineer on the team developed a new automation system while I was tangled in a series of crises. His solution cut out manufacturing errors we once thought were unavoidable. If I had stuck with the old mindset that every breakthrough had to come from me, the company would have missed a major leap forward. Leadership doesn't mean doing everything. Leadership means creating the conditions for others to do what they never thought they could. You don't need to control everything. You need to build a structure where others feel they have the right to create, the right to fail, the right to stand up and say, I'll take responsibility for this. That doesn't happen through commands. It happens when you stop competing with your team and start believing in them. When you stop trying to prove you're the smartest and start proving that you believe they're smart enough to build something great. Empowerment is not the surrender of your role, it's a transformation. You go from being the one who solves problems to the one who develops people, from checking results to nurturing an environment. And when you do this right, your team not only performs better, they begin to believe that what they're doing actually matters. They don't work because they're told to, they work because they want to win too. What I've learned is this: the further you go, the less power you need and the more trust you require. At the start, yes, you must hold everything. But to expand, to elevate, to move from surviving to scaling, you must let go. One hand holds the mission, the other releases control into the hands of those you've trained. Not everyone will be ready, but if you never give them a chance, they'll never become capable enough to go the distance with you. If you feel like you're doing everything yourself, afraid to let go of anything because it might go off track, here's what I'll tell you. You're not building a system, you're maintaining a controlled exhaustion. And that will soon burn through your energy, your trust, and your team's potential. Start small, delegate one decision, put one person in the spotlight, allow them to try and to fail. You don't have to be the one who saves everything. You just have to be the one who builds a place where no one needs saving anymore. When you can do that, you don't just have a strong company, you have an invincible team. And they, not you, will be the reason your company survives, grows, and never looks back. I don't know how many times you've failed, but I can guess one thing. You still remember what it felt like, that feeling when everything you believed in collapsed overnight, that feeling when people no longer look at you with expectation, but with pity, or worse, with disappointment. I've lived through that feeling more than once. Every time a rocket failed to launch, every time a car had defects, every time the media called Tesla Silicon Valley's joke. Each time I was reminded that failure doesn't ask for permission, it arrives, ruthless and silent. But what I've learned after hundreds of stumbles is this: failure is not a sentence, it's a lesson. And if you're willing to learn, it becomes a stepping stone. I used to see every failure as a period, as proof that I wasn't good enough. But when you live through enough losses, you begin to realize no one is defeated by failure. People only break when they believe they're not allowed to make mistakes. Failure is real, but assigning it the meaning of I'm inadequate, that's your choice. I started to shift my mindset when I noticed this. Every failure leaves behind a trace, a data point, a cause, a gap in the system. If you're calm enough to observe, it will show you exactly what's wrong. When SpaceX failed 3 launches in a row, we didn't look for someone to blame. We looked for broken processes, flawed designs, incorrect assumptions. Every time a rocket didn't fly, we understood a little more about the thing we were trying to reach. The same was true at Tesla. In the early days, our battery packs overheated constantly. That could have been the company's death knell. But instead of giving up, the engineering team sat down and dissected every single flaw, tested hundreds of cooling strategies until they created a system more stable than anything we'd ever seen. Without those early failures, we would have never had the battery technology we do today. You need to understand this. Failure is the most honest data life gives you to help you evolve. Not books, not seminars, not advice. Only failure gives you the raw truth about what you're still lacking. And if you choose to learn instead of be ashamed, if you choose to dig in instead of run away, you'll emerge with a toolkit no one else could ever teach you. The problem is most people don't look at failure as data. They see it as a verdict. They let shame take the place of curiosity. They fear being judged more than they fear repeating the mistake, and so they stop. I don't want you to be one of them. I want you to look back at every time you fell and ask, what was it trying to teach me? Because if you haven't learned anything from it, then it wasn't failure. It was just unprocessed pain. That's the culture we've built at Tesla and SpaceX. We don't punish honest mistakes. We encourage experimentation, fail fast, learn faster. When you create an environment where people aren't afraid of being judged, you throw open the doors to innovation. The biggest breakthroughs don't come from perfect plans, but from long chains of imperfect experiments. I want you to remember this. Failure is not proof you're losing. It's proof you're playing a game that matters. The people who never fail are the ones who never dare to do anything significant. If you're stumbling, if you're lost, if you're wrestling with terrible results, congratulations. You're exactly where growth begins. Don't end your journey just because you haven't won yet. Use failure as a map. Turn it over, look for clues, read the signals, ask why more often, dig deeper, and then you'll discover that in the very place you once feared most lies a part of your strength you never tapped into. When you start seeing failure as a teacher, not a judge, everything changes. And from that moment on, you'll stop being afraid to lose. You'll only be hungry to understand. And from that understanding, you won't just rise, you'll go further than you ever imagined. Money can help you start, but it won't keep you going when everything breaks. No one stays up until 3 a.m., endures constant rejection, suffers through relentless emotional pain just for a few numbers in a bank account. I've never lived for money. I live for something that won't let me stand still when the world is still running the wrong way. That mission, not profit, is what carried me through the harshest years. And if you're building something bigger than yourself, you need to ask, what am I doing this for? Beyond everything else. There were nights I couldn't sleep. Not because of work, but because of the haunting thought that if I gave up, everything would go back to the way it was. If Tesla died, the world would once again view electric cars as fantasy. If SpaceX died, no one would chase the dream of sending humans into space independently. I couldn't accept that, not because of the name Elon Musk, but because I believed that if I had the ability to push the world forward, then choosing not to act was an unforgivable choice. When the markets crashed, when investors pulled out, when the headlines called me a delusional tech lunatic, money couldn't help. It couldn't pull me out of self-doubt. It couldn't restore the team's faith. It couldn't buy back shattered courage. But the mission was different. It was the anchor that kept me from getting swept away in the storm. It reminded me why I started, why I couldn't quit, and why every second I kept going still mattered. Tesla's mission was never just about building cars. It was about completely changing how humanity uses energy, about cutting our dependence on fossil fuels, about accelerating the shift to clean energy, not 50 years from now, but right now. And because of that mission, we were willing to redesign everything from scratch, accept years of losses, turn down lucrative offers that didn't align with our direction. If it was just about money, we would have built cheap cars long ago. But we chose the hardest, most expensive, most pressure-filled product because it aligned with the mission. You can't give everything you've got to something if you don't have a reason big enough to give everything. Every day you'll face the question, is it worth it? If the answer is just money, you'll quit. But if the answer is something deeper, beyond yourself, something that touches people you'll never meet, something that impacts a generation you won't live to see, you'll keep going, even when the pressure is boiling your blood. Mission generates mental energy. It turns every conflicted decision into a purposeful one. It becomes a natural filter that tells you what to do and what to walk away from. Every time we've faced a crossroads, I simply asked, which path serves the mission? And when the answer was clear, there was no debate. If you're leading a team, building a brand, or simply reshaping your own life, you need a clear mission. Not a slogan, not a marketing message, a reason for existence. A reason you're willing to be wounded, criticized, unpaid if necessary. A reason that keeps you from running when everything crashes. Write it down, don't let it float in your head, don't leave it vague. Turn it into a declaration you can look at every day and remind yourself, this is why I endure all of this. Because once you have a mission, you no longer need to convince yourself to keep going. The mission will stand you up even when you don't want to. It will push you out of bed, keep you standing when everyone else walks away, and make you willing to start again from zero if you have to. Money is a tool. Mission is a compass. You can lose money, but if you keep your mission, you'll find everything else again. The world doesn't need more people chasing profit. The world needs more people willing to live and die for something worth changing. If you found that, don't let it go. And if you haven't, don't stop looking, because once you connect with your mission, you won't just change your life, you might change the world. I wasn't greeted with applause when I started Tesla. I wasn't cheered on when I built SpaceX. I was mocked, doubted, called a lunatic, burning money on delusional dreams. The same people who once shook my hand after the PayPal deal didn't even pick up the phone when I called for help. But there's one thing I did, and I want you to engrave this in your mind. I didn't wait to be believed. I just kept going until no one dared to doubt. Here's the truth. No one believes you at the beginning. And that's not their fault. It's human nature. People believe in outcomes, not ideas. They believe in success once it's visible, not in the effort when it's still forming. They only begin to trust when everything is clear, when the victory is undeniable, when balance sheets glow and the media turns the journey into a heroic story. But you can't live on borrowed belief. You have to live on an unshakable persistence that comes from within. I've seen belief vanish from the faces of people who once promised they'd stay. I've watched top engineers walk away before anything took shape. I've read cold messages from investors saying I was heading into a dead end. Those moments were real and painful. But if I had given in, Tesla would have died in 2008. SpaceX would have stopped breathing after the third failed launch. And you wouldn't be sitting here hearing this from me now. You don't need the whole world to support you. You just need to hold on to one thing, an unbreakable commitment to yourself, a commitment to continue even when no one claps, to persist even when people laugh, to walk even when no one is walking beside you, not because you're stubborn, but because you see what others can't yet see, and because you're willing to endure what they won't. So one day you can create what they never could. Once you push through enough doubt, you realize no one owes you belief. It's not their responsibility, it's yours, to keep going until there's nothing left for them to deny. And you don't do that through arguments, rebuttals, or trying to prove you're right. You do it through silent, steady action. Every day is a statement. Every step forward is evidence. Every time you don't quit, it's a ripple that makes the world pause and take notice. I used to think I needed to be believed in order to move forward. But then I realized belief doesn't come first. It's the reward for those who persist. The people who once turned their backs will return. The mockery will eventually turn into congratulations. But you can't wait for that to happen before you act. You have to act even while every eye around you is filled with doubt. And when you're strong enough, consistent enough, unshakable enough, your very presence will make it impossible to ignore you. Don't chase approval, chase consistency. Don't expect people to understand. Make it impossible for them not to see the results. You don't need a backing. You need legs that don't step back. Every great creation begins with rejection, but every no goes silent when the work is complete, and you are the only one who decides whether or not it ever gets finished. If today you're building something no one believes in, if you're holding on to a dream that makes others shrug, if you're walking a path that everyone says is impossible, I don't need to believe in you. But I want you to stay on that path. Because if you persist long enough, deep enough, real enough, eventually you won't have to say a word, your results will speak. And by then, people won't ask, are you sure? They'll ask, how did you do it? This world isn't led by those who were believed from the beginning. It's led by those who didn't quit when they were doubted. You don't need consensus. You need inner strength. You don't need applause. You just need to keep moving. Because one day your perseverance will roar louder than all the doubt combined. And by then, you won't need anyone to believe in you. Because no one will dare not to.